PodFest Multimedia Expo is what I hear to be the longest running in-person podcasting industry conference. And today I'm talking with the person who recently made the decision to purchase PodFest Expo, Nick Pavlidis. And Nick and I have a history going all the way back to the earliest days of a Ning platform with a community ran by our friend and mentor, Dan Miller, 48days.net. Nick, it is such a delight to reconnect with you. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing great. It's an honor to be here, and I can't wait to dive deep into what you got on your mind today.
Well, I think there's a lot of people out there who are wondering what the heck's going on in Cliff's world, because out of the blue, without much uh, advanced notice, I came out of retirement as the podcast answer man. That's how you and I first met back in the days when I was primarily focused on podcast coaching and consulting. And as I shared with you recently, I am coming out of retirement, if you will, to make that my primary focus. And so I'm super excited. I was looking for opportunities for me to go all in back into the industry. And so I was like, okay, what conferences are coming up related to podcasting? I want to make sure that I at least attend them. I did a chat GPT search and I said, hey, PodFest Expo is coming up in Orlando in January. Can you tell me who's behind that? And then all of a sudden it talked about the founder. And unfortunately, I did not know the name of the founder and the people who were behind this event in the past. But it said Nick Pavlidis funded the event and said you were involved somehow in 2024. And I'm like, Nick Pavlidis, I know Nick. So I sent you a text message or a direct message on Facebook. I said, hey, are you still into podcasting today? And you said, dude, I purchased the event podcast for PodFest Expo. So that's how you and I reconnected. I want to know, Nick, before we talk about the expo, I want to hear your own journey in podcasting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I guess I'll start at the beginning because obviously the current is Podfest, but I started when my my son was 4 or 3 and my daughter was 2. And I was thinking about starting a podcast because I had met Dan Miller, and I met Dan at a time when I was a lawyer, and it was May 31st, 2013. And I flew down to his house at the time, which was he referred to lovingly as the sanctuary. He had that barn that he converted into conference space. And I went there as a lawyer to learn how to perhaps transition into business coaching or something. The event was coaching with excellence. And I walk in there, and Dan walks in, and then this lady walks in, and they're sitting down in the front of the room. And like the way they looked at each other, like I had no idea who she was. I had listened to Dan's podcast for years. And they were just, it was like they were singing together. There was just back and forth. And I had no idea. I learned it was his wife. And the way they looked at each other, I was just the whole time, I'm sure I learned stuff about coaching, but the whole time I was just obsessed with watching how Dan and Joanne loved each other, frankly. And so I left that event thinking I wasn't here because I needed to learn how to coach. I was here because I needed to learn how to be a better husband to my wife. And so I got on the plane and I flew back, and I just could not get that off my mind. And so I decided to start journaling my journey of becoming a better husband. And I turned it into this little book called Confessions of a Terrible Husband: Lessons Learned from a Lumpy Couch, which is basically about how you can do all the big things right. You can be gentle, you can be faithful, you can provide, but if you do enough of the little things wrong, your relationship will suffer. And so Dan suggested that I turn that into a podcast, and I decided it was a good idea, but I didn't want to, it's such a personal topic that I wanted to make sure my wife was okay with it. And so we're sitting at the dinner table, and I told my wife that I was thinking about starting a podcast for Confessions of a Terrible Husband. And my son's like, what's a podcast? And, he's 3 something years old. And I was like, well, it's kind of like a radio show, but on the computer. And he's like, can I have one? And I was like, oh man, I had convinced myself to just start saying yes to family stuff because I was way too much of a workaholic. And so I was like, sure, buddy, we'll do one together. How about that? And then my daughter's like, I want one. And I'm like, you can be our special guest. And so in 2014, I started the Confessions of a Terrible Husband podcast just as this like side hobby. It immediately took off and got hundreds of thousands of downloads. It just struck a nerve, which was kind of cool. But I also started 5 Minutes with Dad, which it has about 260 something episodes. We stopped recording it a couple years ago, but we started recording when my kids were like 4 and 2. And we've been in Parents Magazine, People Magazine ranked us one of the best places for a podcast, I think. Like it was just like the impact that we made. Like some school districts have our personal growth and leadership podcast for kids as a resource for mental health challenges. Like it's just fascinating. So I got into it just to try to be a little more open about becoming a better husband and then engaging with my kids. And now I have this audio journal of my kids and me having these powerful conversations.
I love that. That is so amazing. I have several instances of content where I've created over the years with our kids. We actually had a show called The Kids Show where the three kids solo produced their own show. And the little behind the scenes story of it is that I was scripting everything that they said. So basically, all I did is I got them all behind the microphone and I basically said, I want you to repeat everything I say word for word. And so I would say, McKenna, say this. And then I would say it and she would say it. And then Matthew, in response, you're going to say this, and he would say it. And then Megan would, and it went back and forth, back and forth. And I just edited out all of my direction. and and it
Wow.
and obviously it's super cheesy, but there is something powerful as a parent to go back and hear the voices of your 3-year-old and your 5-year-old and your 7-year-old in their youthful voices. And then later, Matthew created a podcast called Gaming with Matt, it was his own show. And Megan started out with a podcast called the Hannah Montana Fan Podcast. Her and I co-hosted together 38,000 subscribers around the world. And then she
Wow.
eventually turned that into The World According to Megan. But yeah, dude, there's something incredibly powerful about just documenting your journey of having conversations about just everyday life with your kids.
Yeah, 100%. And we'd just talk about things that were happening, and I would connect them to some personal growth concept. Like
Yep.
my daughter was in a race, and her cousin didn't want to race, but she was standing at the start line. When they said go, my daughter ran. And what did her cousin do? She ran after her, and they finished second and third. It's like she went from not, and so my daughter didn't. I was like, you didn't tell her to run, you ran, and then she ran after you. You led by example, and so it's just so. I to this day, it's probably the favorite thing I've done in my life.
That's awesome. You know what I love about this, Nick, is you and I have started this conversation talking about how we both got into podcasting, what we originally loved about podcasting. And it has nothing to do with monetization, building a business, and finding sponsors and growing your audiences to how can I get 1 million subscribers and downloads and all that other stuff. There's nothing wrong with all of that. And I love the business aspects and possibilities that exist within podcasting. But there's so much more that podcasting has to offer beyond what it can do for a business.
Yeah, yeah, and I find it really, really powerful to like. I never thought like we had a resource of the week where we gave an Amazon affiliate link. We probably earned like $50 in 5 years. Getting a commission on a kid's book or something like that. But there was just something really joyful of sitting there but I and not intending to benefit from it, but I can't tell you. In fact, I would not have been able to get uh, established in the podcasting world. And really, I would not be in the position at PodFest without that podcast with my kids because Chris Kremitzos, who is the founder, and he still is involved and a shareholder. I'm the managing partner and largest shareholder and CEO. But Chris and we got together and sort of became friends, partly because we're two Greek people. But really, he loved 5 Minutes with Dad, and he loved that I podcasted with my kids. And so that was like every time, even to this day, when he introduced me to the PodFest community as the new CEO, it was 5 Minutes with Dad, 5 Minutes with Dad. And so if you do what you love and you just get around good people, the business stuff just ends up happening. Like I'm not worried about how many downloads or clicks or anything like that, but I've made a lot of money because of a podcast that I didn't care about making money from.
Oh, I love that. I resonate with that so much. So, Nick, tell me, when did you first hear about PodFest Expo? What was your first experiences with it?
Uh, Years and years and years ago, I was at it was either Social Media Marketing World or Podcast Movement, one of those two shows. And Chris Kremitzos and PodFest had a booth to promote PodFest. And I connected with Chris, and he told me, he was like, "Oh, you know, you're a Greek, here, have a free t-shirt." Like he and I just became friends. And then I ended up sponsoring PodFest, not because I wanted to get in touch with, but I wanted to support Chris. And so for years, I bought a booth or I just donated money and say, yeah, you can put my logo up as a sponsor, but I don't really care. I just want to support. I know how hard events are. And he and I just became friends. He wrote a book called Start Ugly, which is a really cool little, when I say little, I don't mean it like diminishing the impact of it. I mean the size of the book. It's a thin book, but it's got a really powerful message to just get started and don't worry about things being perfect to get started. And so we just connected over that. We became friends. And then in September of 2023, Chris reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think I've taken PodFest as far as I can take it. And I'm a little burnt out. I need help. I have a couple of inquiries, but I saw what you did because I also invested in a book publishing company a couple years earlier. He said, I saw what you did with the publishing company. You think you could do the same thing with PodFest? Like I don't I would trust it with you. We're friends and I've seen what you've done. And frankly, I didn't want to get into the event space because events are hard. And like to get people into a room, never mind 2,000 registrations. I didn't have the experience with it. So I said, listen, I don't know. I love the idea, but but you sticking around would be really important to me. So what if for 2024, I don't buy the company. I just help out as if I bought the company and you don't need to pay me anything. Don't give me commissions. Don't give me anything. All the money is yours. But let's just see if we like working together. And if we do, maybe you're excited about PodFest sticking around and we can work together and we'll hammer out a deal. I'm not worried about that. And so he's like, yeah, sure. I mean, it's a great deal, right? You want some help? Like there's someone who you reached out to saying, I trust you with my company. And the response is, well, why don't I just help you for free? And so like it was a no-brainer for him. For me, it was a no-brainer too, because I got to test out, talk about due diligence. I got to test out the company. And so we had a really successful 2024. And I had a couple of ideas on how we can use PodFest's relationship with hotels to help other people incubate and elevate their own events. And so he had done similar things in the past. We did it a different way, and it was just super successful. And so we hammered out a deal. And for 2025, that was the first year where it was official that I was the new managing partner and CEO. And it's just been really, really powerful to get to help the community and go even deeper in there.
I love it. Now, transparently, I have not been to a single PodFest Expo event. I'm super excited that I am not only coming to PodFest Expo in January 2026, but I'm super honored that you created a spot for me to speak as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It is a tremendous honor, and I genuinely appreciate it. My experience with the podcasting industry events, I think you may be aware of some of it, but for those who are tuning into the live stream or watching this later or listening in later, my own experience was I never attended any of the events from the Berkwin brothers when they did their podcast event and podcast and new media expo. I came into the podcast industry event space as a speaker when Blog World purchased the podcast and new media expo from the Berkwin brothers. And then I was invited to speak at another event. And then after my second speaking engagement, uh, it was, gosh, who I'm trying to think of his name right now. It just slipped my mind. How is that possible? But anyway, the co-founder and CEO, Rick Calvert, from Blog World, said, "Hey, Cliff, we would love for you to be the director of podcasting for this event because they were having a hard time getting podcasters to come to a blogging event." And thankfully, I was able to convince a number of folks to come, filled an entire track full of podcast speakers, was able to get Leo Laporte and some other very big names in the podcasting space to come out. And that went pretty well for several years. In fact, they even changed the name from Blog World to podcast or Blog World New Media Expo and then just New Media Expo. And the podcasting side of what they were doing grew larger and larger. There were some other things that were going on in that space that I think were a challenge for a lot of people, and they wanted something different. And I was invited to participate in the founding of what would become Podcast Movement. And I'm like, guys, I got a no compete clause with Blog World. I can't participate in moving a community away from something that I've been paid very well to establish. And so I I don't regret anything. Obviously, I'm thrilled with the success of Podcast Movement. But eventually, I did step down from the role of director of podcasting. I did the opening keynote or closing keynote address for the very first Podcast Movement in 2014, and I've attended almost all, except for maybe one or two of the Podcast Movement events. So that's been my experience. But if we're talking 12 years ago when PodFest started, that's about when I was making a transition away from my podcast coaching and consulting so that I could focus more on building a brand as the mindset answer man and doing business strategy and mindset and launching my Free the Dream conferences, my building an online business workshops. And so I was trying and I did for a long time until December of 2025. I divorced myself from the Podcast Answer Man brand, and I kind of tried to stay away from just industry podcast related events because I wanted to be known for more. So, because of that, I've never experienced this. So, can you tell me, have you been to any of those events that I just told you about, and how has PodFest differed from those?
Yeah, and I've been to Podcast Movement a few times, and that's a great event. I know they're at South by Southwest this year. I don't know exactly what, but it seems like a really cool way that they're shifting now that they're in partnership with Sounds Profitable. But for me, the more successful all of the podcasting events can be, the better it is for everybody. And I think all of the events have have their strengths and differences. Podcast movement when I've gone there, there's lots of great podcasters there. The one that I went to most recently, I didn't go this year, but I went last year. It was almost all in one big room. Like the expo hall was really big. And so the stages are there and everyone has headphones and listens to it, which was kind of cool. It's kind of different whether you don't hear the speakers, because it's all in one. I think it was all in one big room. There may have been some offshoot rooms. I think there were, but it was pretty cool. I mean, it was a good size event. A lot of the same attendees as PodFest. But there was also a lot of really, and I know like people, it has a reputation of being more industry focused than creator focused, but I think they do get a lot of creators there too. Um, so PodFest, we focus a lot on the creators, and in everything that I do is really in all of my businesses that I'm involved in. I have a one sentence business plan, and that's if I help enough people become successful, I never have to worry about my own success. And you probably recognize that as borrowed and twisted from Zig Ziglar and other brilliant people who came before us. And so the one sentence business plan for PodFest is really focusing on the independent podcaster. And so if I can help enough independent podcasters become successful, I never have to worry about my own success individually or as a company. And so we really focus. There have been some folks who want to cut us a big check to be a big sponsor and take over some area or whatever. Um, and we have had to say no because it's inconsistent with our vision. So we're really leaning in to the folks who have a message in their heart or a method in their head that they want to share with the world through the medium of podcasting, whether it's audio, video, or both, and giving them all of the people, resources, and information they need to become successful. And so that's our goal in planning out PodFest every year. It's how do we make it so all of the people, resources, so resources are like companies and sponsors and equipment or whatever availability, the people, resources, and information that these people who invest their time and money to come to PodFest need to become successful, in this case in 2026. How do we make it so they're all within those four walls of PodFest? And then secondarily to that, how do we make it easier for them to find the people they need and to learn the information they need? And so it's almost like a little treasure hunt, but the next layer is how do we help them find that treasure?
The biggest thing that stands out to me from what I heard, and I am piecing it together with all of the praise that I've heard from people I know who have attended PodFest in the past. The biggest thing that stands out to me, the differentiator, is the fact that there's a hardcore focus on the independent podcaster, and there's been an effort to keep it from industry professionals taking over the event.
Yeah, I mean, and we love the industry professionals, but at the same time, it's really hard. And so we have a very low margin business. And part of that is we want to make the ticket prices affordable so that way independent podcasters can afford to go, especially because we know they need to pay a whole lot of other people like the airlines and like the hotels, like the restaurants in order to attend. So even if we paid people $100 to go, it would cost them a lot of money. And so we really try to keep it focused on how can we make it worth their time and effort to go. And then with the industry folks, we have a lot of great people in the industry who love us because of our focus on the independent podcasters. It's one of those, if we do what we intend to do with the independent podcasters, the industry folks, we will attract them all, but it won't seem like they quote unquote take over because we'll have so many independent podcasters there. It'll always be about the podcasters, and the industry folks who do show up. They're there to lean into they obviously they want to get a return on their investment, but they're there with that same heart to serve the independent podcasters.
I love that. Tell me about the folks who do the Hall of Fame for podcasting. Because one of the
Yeah.
things that I am aware of now is that the Hall of Fame ceremony has moved over to PodFest Expo. So, can you tell me a little bit about that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they used to do it at Podcast Movement.
Mhm.
It's Rob Greenlee who runs it. And when I want to say it was 2024, they came for the first time. It might have been 2023, but I don't know why they ended up coming over to Podfest. But we love that they're there, and they host their ceremony every Friday of Podfest. So it's Friday the 16th this year. Last year was Friday the 15th and or maybe the 17th. And it's really it's an honor that the Podcast Hall of Fame that's recognized some of the most impactful people in podcasting comes in. It's about a 2-hour ceremony. People get dressed up and they go. Um, there's I'm one of the people who vote to get in, and then people who are in the Hall of Fame get to vote on who gets in. And this year we have, I think a lot of the names have been released. I know they are being released, like our mutual friend Pat Flynn, who I know you've been in a mastermind group with for years, is being inducted. Our mutual mentor and friend Dan Miller, who passed away in 2024, is being inducted. And how cool! And apparently, Rob Greenlee has told me that in his phone call with Dave Ramsey, Dave said, "Feel free to let people know I'm coming to induct my friend Dan Miller into the Hall of Fame." So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. And
Um,
also I heard that it is confirmed that Joanne and Ashley and Kevin and Jared are all going to be there as well, which is Dan's wife and his children. So I'm
Yeah.
super delighted. If nothing else, I'd go to Florida just to witness this ceremony and to hang out with them and see them again.
Yeah, and on Friday, I think it's gonna be Friday right before the ceremony, maybe a couple hours before, they're having a 48 days reunion, almost like a meetup with people in their community, and I believe Dave is gonna go to that too. I'll make sure to give you that info so you can at least pop in and say hello to them. But yeah, it's gonna be it's really an honor to see some of the folks who you never know, like a lot of these brands, you and I might know who's behind them, but a lot of people don't know who's behind them. But to see the founder of a company like Libsyn or a company like Blueberry or a company like Buzzsprout or whatever, to see the people there, not just at the booth, but the ones who really were there building it from the ground up and stressed about how they're going to make payroll, but so committed to helping people and building their dream get recognized for it, it's really something else. And also James Cridland from Pod News is getting inducted this year. So I mean,
Nice.
lots of great. I want to say there's probably eight dozen, maybe 10 or 12 people getting inducted.
That's awesome. Steve Stewart says the next group of inductees is incredible and it's going to be a great ceremony. Steve, thank you for stopping by the live stream today and for your comment.
Yeah, and Steve, make sure you check out PodFest Messenger because we gave your interview yesterday a shout out in it um, as a resource for people to check out in podcast marketing trends.
Let me ask you, Nick, what would you say is, from your perspective, the changing needs of the independent podcaster, and what is PodFest doing to meet those needs?
Well, I think part of it is like your recent live stream where you highlighted how you have for $179, you have this entire yeah, there you go. You have that entire studio in your pocket. I think it's really cool to know that that the barrier to entry is pretty low for a high quality high quality audio or video content. So that's something that I don't know that that's a need. I think as we continue to develop it, it'll be super helpful. For me, the two things that make people successful are consistency and people. We can find information, but I know that my life is going to be the same 5 years from now if I have the same people in my life 5 years from now. If I meet new people who stretch me, who provide opportunity, or who I can provide opportunity to, my life can improve. So I think for me, the biggest needs that I see in independent podcasters is the encouragement, the accountability, and the resources to keep going, number one, and to be consistent. And then number two, to get them in the room. Like, I can't tell you, even if it's a virtual room like you and I are in right now, but even better in person, if they can just get in the room with people who are content but not complacent in their life, they're going to really progress. And you can figure out the rest of it. You can, if you like, the old saying is if you're not embarrassed by the first 5 episodes of your whatever or the first 5 blog posts, then you waited too long. And so all the rest of that stuff can figure it out. The marketing, the recording, I mean, how cool is it that you're able to like pull up an overlay like you have on our show? But if you just get started and keep consistent and connect with the right people, then you're going to be successful. It's when, not if. And so that's part of what we're hoping to provide. We'll give you the information and we'll find you the resources, but let's get the people who want you to succeed as much as they want to succeed on their own.
I love that. I saw something else about some sort of PodFest on the move or around the globe. Can you tell me what this is?
Yeah, so this is Chris Kremitzos' brainchild, and it's brilliant. And we're leaning in. And in fact, we have a partnership now with Podmatch, podcast guesting software. And I definitely did not do it justice, but Podmatch is AI enabled, and it's super dirt cheap. It's like $30 a month, 30 or $40 a month. And it's like online dating for podcasters. People go up and say, "Hey, I'm looking for guests," and people go in and say, "I want to be a guest." And like they have this AI that matches you with people and makes a suggestion. "Hey, I think you should be on this show." And both of you say, yes or no, and then you schedule and you're on a show. And it's really, really well done. And so what Chris thought was, hey, what if we didn't wait a year to see everybody, but let's go around the country and then around the world, to the extent that we can do that, and meet podcasters where they are. Let's have this pod tour where we go to 30 or so cities around the country. Some member of the team is there. And sometimes someone just wants to do a pod tour stop, and they're not a member of the PodFest team, but they might as well be. They come to every show, they're on every call. And so we go around for 2 hours in a night. We talk about PodFest, we talk about what we're seeing in podcasting, and we just meet with people. And so we've done that now for 3 years, and it's becoming more and more popular. And we've even had stops in Colombia. In 2024, we were in the country of Colombia, and we've done 2 years in a row, hoping to do 2026. Rob Greenlee, uh, from the Hall of Fame, he was really, really helpful with some of the pod tour stuff. And also, we had a lot of support from Blueberry for a pod tour stop in the Philippines. And so we did PodFest Asia 2 years in a row, and Todd Cochran would be there, and he'd be a really big supporter, like specifically Todd, but also Blueberry. And Todd passed away this year, so we're hoping to honor him. We are honoring him at PodFest, but we're also hoping to honor him by being able to go back to Asia again.
Yeah, that was a huge loss for the podcasting community as a whole with Todd, and definitely a significant influence in a lot of our lives. So glad to hear
Uh,
that he'll be honored as well. Pod tour, what if somebody has not attended one of those, but they see that one's, let's just say, within a couple hours drive from their own home location, and they were planning to attend one? What's the format of those look like? Or are they unique to each one?
the general format's the same, but because of each city and the locations that we get, usually we go to someone's office who has a conference room, or there's a podcast studio that invites us in, or there's someone who's just like, hey, let's just go to this restaurant. We go in the back room of the restaurant, or it's a co-working space, that a member uses, or a member of the pod fam uses. And it's generally 2 hours long, half an hour of networking at the beginning. Then we have a presentation, 10 trends in video this year, and resources to help you if you're growing your YouTube channel. So one of the PodFest people talks a little bit about PodFest, talks about what we're seeing, and then there's usually about a half an hour afterwards where we offer people a discount if they buy their tickets to the next PodFest there. So it helps sell some tickets, and it helps give people a sense of what the pod fam is really like, a little bit of the energy. And one thing, we were really fortunate as a company. When we say we were the longest continuous live event, it's because we were fortunate to get in 2020 and have our event before everything shut down. So we didn't miss a year of in person. So we're lucky that we've been able to keep that momentum, because even missing 1 year, you lose a lot of momentum with things. So, so this pod tour, it's about feeling that energy, and you'll notice that there's just there's something special about that room where you can just feel, I don't know if it's the authenticity or if it's there's just something about the energy at PodFest that's really powerful.
Well, I know that I have not been to Podfest, but I do know something about the energy of the independent podcasters who get together. And if there's one thing that it's just hearing you describe that energy, it's reminding me of the old days of pod camps. I don't know if you attended
Mm,
any of those,
no.
but pod camps were the wild west of the podcast. Well, before there wasn't an industry. We were just a bunch of independent podcasters. We were a bunch of guys with microphones and hand coded RSS feeds attached, to some audio files out there. It was wild, and I think it was Chris Brogan and Christopher S. Penn who started the movement called PodCamp, and they based it off of something that was called WordCamp at the time, and they were unconferences, and so basically anyone could sign up to speak, and it was first come first serve. And so it's just like, if you have a podcast
Wow.
and you want to come talk, first come first serve, you've got a spot here at this event. But
Well,
the
if Chris
energy.
wants to do that, we'll find a room for him to have an unconference if he wants. He's from around here. He lives like an hour from me or something.
Are you in Boston? Is that right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, cool. Well, I'm sure you can get in touch with him. If not, I can connect you. But
Yeah.
it's amazing. I love that energy. I'm excited about this energy. I'm thrilled for podcast or so for PodFest. I told you I'm having a hard time saying PodFest because podcast rolls off the tongue for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pat Flynn this year is doing the keynote at the Orlando January 2026 event. And as I said, I will be speaking there. Another reason why you should attend: Dan Miller is being posthumously inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. Dave Ramsey, his best friend, is doing the induction. His wife, Joanne, his daughter, Ashley, and his sons, Kevin and Jared, will be there in person. If you need any more reason than that, I don't know what to tell you. Come to PodFest Expo. Now, if you happen to be watching this on any of my streaming platforms, there's a link to purchase your ticket. And if you use promo code or discount code PAM, which stands for Podcast Answer Man, use discount code PAM. You'll get 10% off your ticket. Nick, is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I'll be running around PodFest quite a bit. And so if people see me in the hallways and I look like I'm rushing to get somewhere, stop me. It's fine. I want to meet everyone who's there. I had so much fun meeting people at PodFest last year. And I am going to be running. And if I'm running somewhere, I'll be like, nice to meet you. And let's reconnect later. But yeah, I want to get to know everyone who's there. I am a hardcore introvert, so I probably will not approach you, but please approach me and say hello if you get to PodFest.
Awesome. I love that. And Nick, stay around after the screen goes black here, and so we can wrap up after the live stream has ended. And I just also want to say that if you are going to come to PodFest Expo in January in Orlando, Florida, please email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and let me know that you're going to be there. I'm building a list of all the people as a to-do list. I want to make sure you and I get the opportunity to connect face to face and hopefully even get a selfie together. Anyway, thank you so much, Nick. I look forward to seeing you in Orlando. And for everyone else, we look forward to seeing you there. Until next
Awesome.
time, thank you. Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much. And until next time, we encourage you to take everything you do to the next level. Bye-bye.
Podcast Answer Man.